Hi, and welcome to Pitch, the Music Concept Explained. In this video, I will explain to you how to answer a question on pitch in the HSC music exam. Pitch refers to the height or depth of sound, and you need to be able to listen to a whole range of things to be able to answer the question properly. When answering a question about pitch, you need to answer about 5 different things: melody, ornamentation, range, register and roll, phrasing and harmony. If you take the first letter from each of those words, it spells the word morph. I tell my students to remember it as in morphing into pitch, or morph into pitch. I'll explain each of these individually. It is important to note that as you go through this and you are doing your own answers and practicing with different pieces of music that you want to practice with, that you explain every term that you use. The examiners are looking for people who know what they're talking about and they explain it. You have to imagine that examiners are dumb, so please explain every single term that you use. So melody. The most important thing in pitch is really the melody. You have to listen for and ask yourself these questions. What instrument performs the melody? Now don't forget that a vocal line is an instrument. So someone singing is an instrument. If that's the case, please identify which particular voice it is, whether it's a soprano, mezzo-soprano, alto, tenor, baritone or bass. If it is an instrument, however, it is best that you actually individually identify that instrument. The best thing, if you can't identify the instrument, is say whether it is for example, a high-pitched aerophone or a low-sounding chordophone. Identify it in some way, but if you could identify it in actual recognizing the actual instrument, you'll be much better off and you'll get a much higher mark. After you've identified the instrument, you need to say whether the melody is conjunct or disjunct. In other words, does it go in steps or leaps? Don't forget to explain those terms as you go. Also, how many melodies are there? If it is a song and it has several different melodies or several different sections, well, then state that there are 3 different melodies. Use your letters to describe each melody in the section, as in like section A for the first, the letter A for the first one, B for the next one. It might go back to A, then it might go to a C. Whatever it is, please identify those melodies. Are there any unique features? Is there something that really changes between one melody and the next? In other words, is it the same melody repeated by different instruments, or is it a different melody every time performed in a different way by the same instrument? Describe the melody. Is it flowing? Is it jerky? Is it peaceful? Is it energetic? You can use whatever word you like there as long as you justify it. And if you can, please describe, draw, and don't forget to label the contour or the shape of the melody. So in other words, if it is jagged, you might want to draw a diagram that looks like it's a jagged hill, or if it's ascending, or if it's a nice smooth flowing melody, well then you need to do that as well. If you are really clever, you can actually notate the melody. There will be manuscript provided for you to do that. Ornamentation. This is like the little decorations on the Christmas tree. If the melody is sung, is there any use of melisma? That is, more than one note on a syllable. Is there any use of trills or turns? Identify when, where and by what instrument. The same for melisma. If it is at the end of a phrase, by the last note of each phrase, well then you state that. Is there any scale-like passages? Does it ascend or descend? Is there any use of slurs, slides, glissandos, hammer-ons, pull-offs, palm muting, etc., etc.? The important thing here is to know your own instrument. If you play a melodic instrument, know the techniques that you can do on your instrument and listen for those things. It will help, and don't forget, you must explain every single term you use. Range, register and roll, the 3 R's. List all of the instruments of pitch that you can hear in the excerpt. State the range of each instrument. Is it narrow? Is it wide? Is it medium? That means what's the lowest note they perform, what's the highest note they perform. A narrow range might be only between 3 and 5 notes. A wide range, we're talking a couple of octaves. A medium range, maybe an octave to a little bit more. State the register of each instrument. In other words, is it played by the right hand of the piano, the treble, which is the high notes, or the left hand of the piano, bass or low notes? I find it easier to think in terms like that. If you are a singer, you should be able to determine whether it's high or low by whether or not you can actually sing it or not, because if it's beyond your range, whether in height or in depth, then you should have a fair range of where it is. State the role of each instrument. Which instrument has the melody, which has the melodic accompaniment, which has rhythmic accompaniment. Now don't forget, melodic instruments can also play a rhythmic accompaniment. The bass does this, and so does the piano in some forms of early rock music or jazz music. Phrasing. State what phrasing it is. Is it 2-bar phrasing, 3-bar phrasing, 4-bar, etc.? The easiest way to work out how the phrasing is firstly work out your time signature, and then tap on your hand. Don't tap on the desk because it really annoys other students. When you hear the long note at the end of a phrase, start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, etc. until you work out when the next long note is, or the little breath in the melody, whether if it was done by, say, a flute. That way you can work it out. If you can't work out the actual phrasing, then you might be able to use the word indefinite phrasing, so that it shows that you still can identify that it wasn't an even type of phrasing. Describe the phrases as either balanced or unbalanced, symmetrical or asymmetrical. Really, it doesn't matter which words you use there because they're basically the same. You could even say even or uneven. In other words, does it start and end in the same sort of point, or does it start low and end high? That would be unbalanced. Listen for any use of call and response. In other words, one instrument does the call and a group of instruments might respond. Or in the case of a choir, one vocalist might actually sing the call, and a group of people singing, a choir for example, might do the response. If there is any call and response, please state between which actual instruments and where it happens in the excerpt. Harmony. Is the overall sound consonant or dissonant? In other words, is it pleasant or unpleasant? Is it major, minor, or even atonal, which means it doesn't have a tonal centre? Is there any use of familiar patterns, for example, the 12-bar blues or the ice cream chord change? Are there any melodic ostinatos? If so, when and by what instrument? Does the piece modulate? In other words, it changes key, so it might change up or down a key. If so, where does this happen? And is there any use of arpeggios, which is broken chords, a walking bass line, or even an alternating bass line? You need to be able to ask yourself all these questions. As I said earlier, please make sure that you state when these things happen, explain all your terms, and it'll be much easier. I ask my students to always listen to a piece of music and write down every instrument you hear in the first listening. After that, start breaking it down and start talking about each of the things that I have asked you to talk about in this little video. If you state and do all these little bits and pieces and explain them, you can get a really good mark, because I've had students that have done it before. Please don't sit there and do nothing in the exam. Keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. Thank you.